好，各位观众，他突然之间就出现了啊，不好意思，感觉上好像突然之间就开始了。今天是礼拜四，那么本来是3点钟，同时临时通知又说是2点钟开始，但是2点钟呢突然587个今天，包括一个疑似的。
Total numbers of people diagnosed with COVID-19 to 137,810. That includes 126 people in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region, 365 in the Fraser Health Region, 21 people who are in the Vancouver Island Health Region, 60 people in the Interior Health Region, and 15 people in Northern Health. We currently have 5,691 active cases across the province, of whom 413 people are in hospital, 141 remain in critical care ICU, and 130,310 people have recovered from the acute phase of COVID-19. As some people may have noticed, we are no longer reporting on the number of people under active public health monitoring or follow-up, and this is for very practical reasons. This was a metric that was basically to give people a sense of how many people have been required to be isolated or in quarantine because they've been exposed to somebody with COVID-19. And we initially started this last summer when we had our surge of cases in the interior around Kelowna as a way of helping people understand the impact that it was having not just on people who were diagnosed with COVID-19, but on their contacts as well. With this information, however, is based on public health follow-up with every single
这个是每一个人我们的公卫系统这个建立起来的，跟踪建立起来的。今天有这个哑语来翻译来，估计会有 PowerPoint 那么今天是587个新增，总数到了137,810个人。那么他也是说，这个很耗时，这个。所以，而且这个统计也很耗时，所以这个即使也没有多少意义，多少人监视居住。所以他们决定就不报了，不提供。其实 CDC 都有。好，再看看多少人死亡。
We have no new outbreaks to report
没有新增
today, which leaves us with 3 outbreaks and active outbreaks in long-term care
3个长期护理院
and 2 in acute care.
2个急诊性诊疗，5个。
We have 5 additional deaths
武力死亡
in the province today, bringing the total number of people who've died from COVID-19 to 1,632.
1632个了。
Most of the people affected again were over the age of 70, several in their
70岁以上70岁80岁以上
in their 60s.
有一个是
60
多岁。
go to all of the families
这
who
个
are
也
mourning
是
the
诚
loss
挚的
of
哀
their
悼
loved
等
ones,
等
their community and their care providers. We know how challenging it is in this time. I also want to report today that we have had a second case of vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytosis.
还是有第2例严重副作用，第2例了。
Following receipt of the AstraZeneca
也是 AZ 疫苗，阿斯利康疫苗。是一个男性40多岁，现在健康稳定，在菲沙卫生局下的。
As we know, this is a rare but very serious
我们都知道这个是这个情况很严重，虽然很少案例，所以希望大家如果有任何不舒服的症状，马上联系我们这样治疗越早越好。
And what we do know, it is caused by for some reason in
我们知道这个疫苗阿斯利康疫苗引起血栓的原因是我们已经找到了，所以呢，这主要是因为这个阿斯利康引起了身体里边的免疫系统的过激的反应，那么有些人呢就会产生血栓，那么同时呢，使得身体里边的有些紊乱，所以这个，所以我们一定会有治疗方案，所以只要有任何疫苗打了那个 24天之内主要不舒服，有任何不舒服就打811。那么如果你有这个严重的症状或者是头疼呼吸短气短促或者是胸疼那个头晕这个而且没有好的话，一定要找我们，我们会给你们做检验、做检查，然后呢会给你做治疗。所以阿斯利康严重副作用今天是第2例报告 ，Bc 省这个他说虽然很少，但是也是第2例了，也很严重了。所以他说是很少见，但是这个是严重的，所以你必须要联系我们我们会很认真的、严肃的对待这个因为特别是40岁以上，40、50、60了。
On that note, so far in British Columbia, we have delivered 2,335,513 doses of all 3 of the COVID-19 vaccines here in BC.
好，2335513人这个疫苗那么也就是说一半个人以上已经打了第1针了这个也是一个里程碑。那么所以他说我们的疫苗试种进度很快只要是疫苗到货，我们主要是疫苗越来越多会到达，所以我们也期望每一个年龄段的都能够马上接到第1阶段第1针的疫苗同时呢，我们也是开展12岁到17岁孩子的疫苗的接种这个工作可能下星期开始会给大家更多的信息特别是那些16岁17岁的那些孩子们，这个高中生我们先让他们先打因为他们马上要高中毕业了。
To ensure we can have some safe celebrations of graduation coming up in June. And so stay tuned as well.
因为让他们可能有一个短暂的这种毕业典礼或者是这种活动让他们，所以请你们保持关注我们。
I will say yesterday as well, we communicated that we have made that decision to reserve all of our remaining AstraZeneca vaccine for second dose boosters.
那么我们昨天大家也知道了，有了一个重要的决定，让所有的现存的阿斯利康疫苗作为第2针去打，而不做第1针了。这个也是整个加拿大阿省和 Manitoba 省以后，我们 BC 省第3个是决定不把阿斯利康疫苗作为第1针去打，作为第2针去打了。
In the coming months, so that time to wait as we had before has been reduced, and soon
那么他也是说到了辉瑞和莫德纳疫苗会越来越会越多的到货，所以呢我们等的时间会越来越短，不像之前要等，现在不要等了。那么我周围有一个朋友，他昨天注册，第2天就通知他预约了，所以这个现在是速度很快了。
For people that received AstraZeneca, you did make the right choice, both to protect yourself.
就算你已经打了阿斯利康了，你们也是做了一个正确的决定因为他们的有效率、保护率都是很高的，你们要有自信心那么所有的 BC 省施打的疫苗都是有效的保护使得我们更多的人能够保护起来。
Operationally, though, it means that other nations around the world also have challenges in getting vaccine.
那么同时呢，我们也看到世界上其他很多国家还打疫苗有困难，没有疫苗，特别是看到印度的这个发生的这个惨况所以我们还是比较幸运的。所以我们莫德纳和辉瑞会很多，会越来越来，额外的更多。所以我们会确保大家每一个人都有会打到疫苗，我们一定会确保这个疫苗的到货。也谢谢你，金朝的网友，也是谢谢，我是尽我所能把政府的信息、正确信息带给大家。特别是这种自媒体时代这个讹传讹的事情挺多的，也愿主保佑你，也愿主保佑每一位听众。
Once we know more about taking Pfizer or Moderna as a second
所以这个 第二针呢也是如果我打的是莫德纳，那么现在有个研究说混打，可能打个辉瑞效果会好更好，或者打个阿斯利康。那么今天呢，给大家会模型分析，也就是之前大家看到那些图表，再做一遍。那么他说很多人有一些问题，我都打了第一针了，那么我昨天看到一条消息是比较正式的，是说到的初步的结论看出来这一波下降很快，主要是疫苗的作用。好，那么现在这个是2020年12月27号到5月1号，今年的5月1号这个就是这个case 就是新增案例那么21天以内打了第一针，21天以内等于是没有疫苗打的，那么占了78%，21天以上打了第一针的占了1.7%，总数是1340例。那么打了第二针7天以上的感染的才120例，那么0.2%。所以他说这个呢，疫苗是作用很大很大的。这个很重要，这张图表很重要。
Those who have been vaccinated, and at least 3 weeks after their dose 1, we've had
1,300 people
who have been affected. That's about 1.7% of the cases. And there's about 120 people who have had 2 doses and have been infected with COVID-19.
主要是打了第一针3个礼拜之内都算是没有打过疫苗这个把这个都归类进去了。那么打了一针又是3周以后的，他说是1340例，占了1.7%。
The average age of cases reflects what happens in the community, so where we've been seeing transmission, and the median age is about age 49.
所以这个是很清楚了疫苗的作用。同时，他也是说到了住院的人数以及重症监护的人数同时也是图表里面没讲，当然他自己说的，我估计 PowerPoint 没跟上还是怎么样。那么所以大家看到了，打了第一针不是说我有获得我有那个免疫了，一定要3周以后，也有1.7%的人占了1.7%有1340例。那么这个呢是说到了从12月13号打第一针到今年的5月1号这个间隔的时间一开始呢是第一针到第二针是2周，慢慢的延长。那么他也是说到了，只要打了一针3周以后呢，身体里边的抗体慢慢建立起来了，抗体水平会很高。
And after several weeks, we have very low rates of infection.
所以他说3个礼拜以后呢，那么这个获得的案例就会越来越少。
After 7 days after receiving their second dose
那么同时呢，打了第二针7天以后，那么等于身体里边有抗体了。所以他说占了0.03%。
The Pfizer vaccine, because that has been the majority of people who've received vaccination, has been with Pfizer. So 1,110 of the cases received Pfizer, 127 Moderna vaccine, and 103 AstraZeneca or the Covishield vaccine. We have some great similar data that comes from the First Nations Health Authority, who, as we know, have been following the COVID outbreaks and vaccination in First Nations communities, and this reflects very similar to what we've seen overall. This uses 14 days post first dose, so again we see a dramatic drop off after 2 weeks, and again the second drop off after between weeks 3 and 4. And these were 353 cases in First Nations communities. You remember that First Nations communities were prioritized for a variety of reasons to receive immunization, and for many of them, most of the communities we've done it on what we call a whole of community approach. And this is a nice representation as well
这个也是年龄分布，打了疫苗以后这个打了第一针以后，这个每个年龄段受的感染的情况，
per 10,000 people，
这也是每1万个人里边的
the rate prior to immunization, and then the blue lines are post a single dose of either AstraZeneca or Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. So again, really positive, showing us the risk decreases dramatically,
黄颜色的是
but
莫
it is
德纳
not zero, and it takes some time
那么
to
绿
get
颜
to
色
that
的是
level
表
of
示辉瑞
protection.
橘黄色的是总数
Data that we've been following is looking at some of the
这个是
communities
我
where we
们
saw
北基
very
省
high
北部
case
的一个
rates,
镇
and
叫
we maintain and immunize
Rupert 皇
the
子
community as a
这个
whole.
城市
And this
他们
is
是全民免疫了
the
他是
information
说
from
每
Prince
10万个人
Rupert,
里
and
边
when that
这个
the gray
阳
bar
性率的
shows
下降的这个
the
急速
time
下降的一个
period
趋
where the
势
immunization clinics were happening, and then the drop off over time. And the important thing here is, even though cases were increasing in the community at the end of March and through April into May, outside of Prince Rupert, we saw a sustained and low level in Prince Rupert itself. So this is something that helps us understand what may happen as an entire province once we get to those levels of immunization.
北方的其他城市
that we can see
这个
rapid
黄
drop-off
颜色的
and
就是
sustained drop-off
Prince
over
Rupert 这个
time
城市的
when we
疫情
have that
曲
community
线
immunity
那么因为他们给他们打了急速
even in an area like Prince Rupert.
这个疫苗施
The
打
other places
所以
where
一下
we've
子
seen
就
this
下
similar
降了很多
phenomenon has been following
那么
the
这个呢是
data
公
of
卫系统
long-term
的
care,
工作人员以及
where
长期
healthcare
护理
workers
院
working in
或者
long-term
协
care
助
who
性
were
的这
prioritized
种
to receive vaccine
养
first.
老院
We
他
had
们
a
的这个
dramatic
阳性
drop-off over
获得
time,
率
and
自
that was
从
sustained
打了
even
疫苗
through
以
this
后
third
从
wave,
12月
where we see the blue line on the
以及
top
1月
is
初以
healthcare
后
workers in
突然
settings
下
other
降
than long-term
那么
care, where we
蓝颜
did
色的
see
表示呢就是
higher
其他
levels
环
and
境下
a
的
bump
这个
up during the third
他说
wave.
还有第三波的回升但是这个长期护理院他们的一些医护人员就没有回升所以这些图表都说明了疫苗的作用
reach that point where 90% of residents in long-term care
这个呢是70岁以上的长期护理院的居民的这个情况他也是说到了这个传播的速度急速下降
communities within themselves where
那么
we've reached
蓝颜
that
色的
point
呢
of
就是
community or
其
herd
他
immunity
年龄
within
的
that
这个
care
社
home.
区的
And despite
其他
the
环境
dramatic
下的
increase that we've
这
seen
个
over the last few months in cases
这
in
个
the
阳性率
community
的这
in
个
the same
波形
people aged 70 or over, we see this sustained decrease in protection in our long-term care homes. And if we look at it again, this is
这
taking
个是
just
每
that
10 万人
portion
里
of
边的住院的情况
70 and
那么
above, and on the
黄颜
bottom
色
you
的
can
呢
see
是
the
也是
immunizations in
70
that
岁以上
age
所以
group have
70 岁
gone
以上
up.
住院
On the
永远
top
是
it
多
shows
的这个
hospitalizations,
可
and
以
it
看得
tells
清
us
楚
again that once we protect
那么
people
他
with
说那个
immunization,
蓝颜色的那个
gradually we see
灰
a
色的
decline
竖
in
线呢是4月
hospitalizations,
份
and
我们
now
整个
we're
省的
starting to
严
see
厉
the
措
effects
施
in
以
those
后
age 40
整
to
个
60. So
70
data
岁
I
以上
presented
的人以及
in
40到
April
60
showed that
岁
it
以
was
上
the
的这些
40 to
人
59
蓝颜色的
year old age
40
group
到
that was
60
was
橘黄色的
increasing
是
in
70以上
our
的这些人的
hospitalizations
住院率
and
以及
having more
疫
severe
苗接种的
infections.
情
Now
况
that immunizations have
下
increased
面
in
是
that
上
age
升的
group,
是表示
we're starting to see
接
that
种的
level off
比
as
率
well.
那么这个
So
上
what
面呢
does
是
this
住
tell
院的
us?
情况
This tells us that we're
那么他说这个
seeing
就
really
是总结了
strong progress through our
这个也是
immunization
说了
program
就是
across the
这个
province,
上面这些
and
图
it's
表说明
making
了
a
什么
difference at a health authority or at a healthcare facility level, at
所
a
以他也是说
community
到了
level,
这个
at a
从社区
population
来讲
level.
从这
But
个
we need to
急
keep
症
it
性
up.
诊疗所啊或者是长期
There
护理
have
院的
been
这些
definitely been
程度来
infections.
讲
We know that
已
this
经从
vaccine,
疫苗
even after
获得
2
了很大的
doses,
好
all of the
处
vaccines
风
we
险
have are
从
not
高到低
100% effective,
那个获
but
得的
they
疫
do
苗的人的风险
absolutely reduce your
感染的
risk
风
of
险
infection,
远远
and
低于这
importantly,
个
they
没
reduce
有
your
打过
risk
疫
of
苗的人
transmitting to others, and they reduce your
然
risk
后呢 就
of
算
being
是
in the
感染
hospital,
上了
of needing ICU
这个
care
新冠
or
病毒
dying.
那么
So
这
these
些
are
打过
important
疫苗
things
的
for
人
all
的
of
症
us.
状比
One
没
thing
有
I will say
疫苗
is
的人
we've
症状
started
轻
our
得多
program
轻得
based
多
on risk, and that's your own personal risk of having severe illness or death. That's why we started with long-term care homes.
然后呢
Why we
我们
started with
BC
our
省
elderly
整个
and seniors
疫苗
first.
的 有效率现在还是在进一步的研究，我们会给大家一个更详细的有效率以及疫苗的保护率的这个具体数据，马上会给以后马上只要分析完了就会给大家分享。
So just a final note, we are doing what we call vaccine effectiveness studies, so the detailed studies comparing individuals who are immunized and non-immunized.
那么这个呢就是总结一下，就是刚才说的我们 BC 省的疫苗的这个情况。因为现在呢已经因为疫苗打了一段时间了，所以这个效果已经体现了，所以我们才把这个数据收集出来公布给大家做分析，早也没有用。
So more of that information will become available to us in the next few weeks.
那么同时呢，接下来的几个礼拜会有更多的数据来，因为今天为止已经230多万的人打了疫苗了。那么2个周以后，这个数据会越来越多。
It tells us that our risk-based approach to the immunization program that we've had here in BC is working.
所以他也是说到了疫苗在 BC 省所起的作用，我们已经得到了正面的结论。所以我们刚才他说看到了这些一撇这些数据，我们已经获得了巨大的疫苗带来的利益。所以这个。所以同时在这个高风险的社区里边也是巨大的利益所在，这个疫苗已经给了我们很好的一个预示作用，所以希望大家能够打疫苗的去注册。同时呢请大家一定要知道打了一针不等于你已经全部获得了疫苗免疫系统，所以就我们这个疫苗这个病毒还是在社区里边在传播在流传，所以大家一定要记住打第2针是很重要很重要的一针只是呢那么他说第2针呢是能够给这个病毒更有力的反击，所以第2针很重要。
We won't get to the bottom of our infection curve until we get to a much higher immunization rate. So everyone needs right now to register to get vaccinated.
希望大家能够行动起来，每个年龄段的人都可以注册了，请大家来注册。注册完了之后就会有打疫苗。所以上次也说了注册的作用，注册呢使得他们对疫苗的分布分发有一个科学的判断，所以希望大家能够及时的去注册，现在每个年龄阶段都能注册了。
What we are doing in BC is working.
所以他说了，我们现在 BC 省现在是行之有效的，我们现在整个疫情的情况是在向下走这个是大家看到了。同时呢，为了我们自己所爱的亲朋好友，希望大家能够行动起来，我们希望能够紧密的团结起来这个能够把这个建立起保护战线，把这个所有的社区我们的亲朋好友都保护起来。
And even then, it's not going to be flicking the switch. It's going to be gradually and slowly
那么他说，同时呢不会反复像这个再来一次，所以疫苗打了之后只能会疫情慢慢下降，所以这个是很重要的，很重要。我们已经可以预见未来，大家周末可以享受生活可以聚会，可以去出去，所以这个对我们社区，对我们每个人的生活都很重要，对我们家庭所以希望大家还是be kind, be calm and be safe。就是这个是他最著名的3句话就是请安心，请容忍、容让，以及呢安全。那么卫生厅长再做一下总结，那我再多啰嗦一下，刚才记下来了昨天到今天24小时呢是新增了587个，那么我们 BC 省总数现在到了137810个人其中包括1例疑似案例我这个是自己发明的我不知道怎么去，应该说是 epic link， 就是说是相关的，没有找过去记住，比如说这个人身上可能已经有了，但是呢他没有检测出现在的 active 的阳性是指这个意思。那么同时呢，延安卫生局新增是126例 飞沙卫生局也下来了，新增365例，当然占了365例，还是占了587例的绝大多数了啊。那么岛上卫生局新增21例。那么他说，昨天也是取得了一个很大的成就这个施打了51000多个人，所以现在是233万5513个人了，接打了疫苗，这个也是里程碑意义的。昨天是超过了50%，我们大家都知道，其实这个数字又不对了，因为12岁到17岁的人又加进来了。之前呢，18岁以上可以施打疫苗的本省是420万人左右那么今天应该说50%应该差不多了，因为你要把12岁到17岁的，那么他说12岁到17岁的孩子的施打呢，计划呢可能下星期公布，先给大家有一个 heads up， 也就是提个醒，也就是16岁、17岁、18岁的人先打，因为他们高中生活最重要，他们要考虑到毕业啊，各种各样活动啊，让他们先打。那么超过今天的为止呢，已经超过250万的人来注册了啊，这个是好消息。我礼拜一还是上星期4给大家做转播的时候说到是210万人注册，现在已经250万的人超过以上已经注册了所以现在已经不存在说年龄什么年龄了，现在是都可以注册了，只是呢，他说40岁到44岁最近开始预约了，接受预约了那么所以他说是那么现在呢，只要是热点地区，包括树林地区的基本上都可以打了。所以现在2003年了2003年是指啥？就是16岁那么他说，那么有些他说。
Those born in 1996 or earlier who are 25 and above will be invited to register. That's after 7 o'clock.
那么我还是有错他说明天以后呢，就是25岁以上的人注册，其实好像都可以注册了，怎么？要不我搞错了吗？不是各个年龄阶段都可以注册。那现在是25岁，那么可能接下来就是1天减3岁了，就是这个意思那么热点地区，包括树林整个城市的，都可以去注册了。那么同时大家一定要搞清楚，注册和预约是两回事，一定要先注册注册完了之后他们会通知你来预约就是这样。预约的话呢，各个城市各个点你都可以自己选同时呢，不要担心有阿斯利康了。阿斯利康呢，刚才伯尼医生说了第一针不把阿斯利康作为第一针去打了。
About the value of immunization, I think Dr. Henry has taken you through that today. It is transformative, of course, to people and their safety from COVID-19.
所以他说也是大家清楚这个是安全的我们 BC 省现在打所有的疫苗都是安全的。同时呢，今天 BC 省汇报告大家是第2例由于是打了阿斯利康引起的严重的过敏反应，这位男性40岁以上现在状况稳定了。所以伯尼医生说了，只要你打了疫苗21天以内你还是有呼吸急促胸痛持续的头疼等等，那赶紧联系811或者呢去看急诊这个越早汇报越好。
So in total, from April 19th to May 9th, a total of 1,483 surgeries have now been postponed. In the week April 26th to May 2nd, and health authorities completed 6,664 surgeries, of which 5,274 were scheduled and 1,390 were unscheduled. These numbers reflect, and it shows the enormous work still being done for people across health authorities, but they reflect what we expected to see. It doesn't lessen the disappointment the postponements caused our patients, their families, and their care providers. Again, each of those patients will be contacted to rebook their surgery once the pressure on our hospital decreases. I note in that regard that in terms of base beds, we have about 638 vacant base beds across our system and 3,076 vacant surge and base beds, and an ICU, 76 vacant base beds, and 273 vacant base and surge ICU beds or critical care beds. However, we are using surge beds in the Fraser Health Authority and Vancouver Coastal Health Authority currently 175 surge beds and 21 critical care beds are being used, and what that says to us is that COVID-19 is still circulating. Too much in our community, hospitalizations have come down from the peak in April by about 98, so we're at 413 today in hospitalizations. Still way too high, 141 in critical care, still way too high. And the greatest gesture each of us can make in respect of those awaiting surgery, for example, is to get vaccinated. If we've not registered, again, we must register now. And when we're invited to book our shot, we must book right away. We can go to the Get Vaccinated website again, or alternatively 1-833-838-233. That's 1-833-838-2323 to take that vital step in making ourselves and our communities safe. Right now, 51.5% of those eligible have had their first shot, and 2.8% have received their second dose. And while many of the key indicators show that the COVID-19 pandemic is moving in the right direction, let's face it, 500 to 600 cases a day is still way too high.
每天新增500多、600多，对我们来讲还是太高了，太高了啊！希望大家引起重视，希望大家能够行动起来啊，这个阻止病毒的传播。
Aujourd'hui, nous annonçons 587 nouveaux cas qui ont testé positifs pour COVID-19, pour un total de 137 810 cas en Colombie-Britannique. Nous sommes attristés d'annoncer 5 nouveaux décès liés au COVID-19 pour un total de 1632 décès en Colombie-Britannique. Nous offrons nos condoléances à tous ceux qui ont perdu leurs proches durant cette pandémie. Parmi l'ensemble des cas confirmés de COVID-19, 413 personnes sont actuellement hospitalisées, dont 141 en soins intensifs. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. We're happy to take your questions.
A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question and one follow-up. First question, Shannon Patterson, CTV.
Oh, hi, Dr. Henry. You probably saw that the CDC in the United States today issued new mask guidelines saying that Americans who are fully vaccinated can now take their masks off, both inside and outside.
他说的是口罩问题。美国华盛顿的 CDC 已经说了，对了口罩新的命令，只要你2针打完疫苗都可以不要戴口罩了。那我们 BC 省的口罩政策有没有政策啊？你预计一下有没有改
？Of when we're going to have guidance like that.
Sure. So there's a couple things about that.
他说这些事情要澄清一下。我们现在我们还没有到那个全民免疫的程度，特别是第一针还有第二针远离这个所以我们社区里边的传播还很多，每天还有很多的新增案例。我们每天都在回顾看这个社区的病毒传播。我们也看到了美国现在在重启在美国联邦政府以及各个州政府都在考虑重启。那么同时在修改他们的行为规范。我们现在一定要看到我们本身社区的实际情况这个免疫的程度，还要看到其他的因素。那么同时呢，我们在5月长周末以后，我们看看我和我的同事再看看整个省的会看看给大家有些什么新的信息给大家。这个很清楚了。现在什么都不考虑，在5月长周末以后，5月长周末是5月24号，这个维多利亚节。
is basically zero. So can people who are outside, assuming they're not in a great big giant jammed up crowd, take their mask off What's your advice for outdoor mask wearing?
So we have always said that when you're outside, as long as you're as you say, not in a large group together, talking closely with people, that masks are optional. And we know that outside versus inside is much, much less risk. If there's any breeze at all, things disperse rapidly. So if somebody's walking by you or running by you on the sidewalk, even if they come right close to you, the chances of spreading COVID that way are zero. As close to zero as we can possibly get. So I think we need to be rational about wearing masks outside.
那么他也是说到了室外这个传染的风险很少，特别是就算有人走过去或者遇面所以这个室外戴口罩呢，还是要讲究点科学。他的意思就是说你在走行道或者人行道走什么都不要所以这个理智对待。
Than inside, and it's important to be able to get outside every day, and I encourage everybody to do that, especially now as we're able to do that more and more. Being outside is a safe way of
所以同时说到了室外永远比室内，室外永远比室内室外永远比室内这个安全不会
Next question,
风险会少。
Global News.
Dr. Henry, there's been a story just published in the South China Morning Post around BC's long-term care system. And the investigation found that more than 1,000 people at 42 homes where outbreak status was deliberately not declared when a low-risk staff fell ill. I don't know how much information you have on these sort of cases, but how concerned should people be that there wasn't a declaration of an outbreak in long-term care homes where there were sick staff?
Yeah, so
那么今天他说有一个故事爆出来有一个长期护理院那边的职员很低，才6个人。那么同时呢爆发了这个新冠。
Influenza, which usually has at least one sick resident or transmission within a facility, and then we recognized that was not sensitive enough. It didn't catch outbreaks early enough with this new virus, COVID. So it was the public health teams looked at where we were seeing transmission, and you remember early on how rapidly it would spread within facilities. So we do declare an outbreak with a single staff with exposure within the facility or a single resident in the facility.
只要有一例居民或者一例职员阳性的，就宣布这是爆发。这个我们好像之前也解释过给大家介绍过。
During the period of time of their infectiousness, or had been fully adherent with the infection control precautions like wearing of PPE. Then there was a judgment made about the risk, and that was an enhanced surveillance where we did some extra monitoring and testing, and then if testing showed that anybody else was positive, then an outbreak was declared. So it was a way of making sure that we weren't
那么同时呢，也是说到了，他也是说到了，在这些长期护理院或者是这个协助性的这个护理院，只要有人短期的来访问，同时呢他是阳性的话呢，他们就会加强这些机构的检测只要没有人是阳性的，不会宣布是爆发。这个也是解释一下暴露和爆发的区别我认识一个朋友，他就是这个工作场所是爆发就是说工作场所只要有3例以上，而且是证明这个3例之间是相关联的，是工作场所传染的，那么这个工作场所就是爆发。那么长期护理院以及医疗诊所以及协助性的护理机构，只要有1例就算是爆发。那么爆发和暴露他们的这个公卫系统的应急措施反应是不一样的，这个不是咬文嚼字。
how this is going to work, how it's safe.
那么现在呢，又说到了重启 2.0 啊，我们之前是 2.0， 现在很流行啊，文革 2.0 啊，大家都看到了文革 2.0， 那么现在是重启 2.0 ，Restart 2.0。那么他说，你现在重启 2.0， 现在马上就要开始了，你能不能给我们稍微透露一下，我们是将来这个重新重启是怎么样？啊，他说我们现在所有的具体政策都没有，具体计划都没有，希望你们不要现在做旅行计划啊，不要做旅行计划，一直到这个5月最后一个礼拜啊，我们到时候再看看，然后呢，慢慢放松这个限制措施。所以我们一定要到时候看社区里边的传播的情况是下降，怎么下降啊？所以希望大家还是继续耐心。那么我们看看，还有6月份是没有长周末的，7月份长周末啊，怎么看啊？如何放松？那么那些活动怎么弄啊？允许规模到什么程度？现在还不知道啊，所以大家有计划婚礼啊，或者计划其他的庆祝活动啊。希望大家还是引起重视，引起注意啊。那么同时呢，我们要考虑到秋天的时候，我们看看会不会有没有这个病毒才会卷土重来啊。所以我也是很美国、英国的情况，我也在密切的观察当中，我看到他们那个重启的步骤很慢、很小心、很谨慎。所以因为我们现在还是在这个全球流行病期间，所以我们现在还是要如何去考虑积极应对这个病毒零星的爆发啊。零星不叫爆发，零星案例啊，以及社区爆发啊等等。所以我们只能是慢慢的、逐渐的放开。我们如果速度很快放松的话，这个病毒马上就会迅速返回。
Glenn Korstrom, BIV.
I couldn't quite see the charts as I phoned in, the ones that you showed earlier, but it sounded like you said that there were 13 deaths in people who have been vaccinated.
这个记者问的，他说因为你这个图表太快，我在打电话打进来，所以没看到。他说有13例是中疫苗的，这个请你解释一下。
So I'm wondering if you could do that going forward, and how many of those were vaccinated with 1 dose or 2?
And the short answer is no, I can't do that. We're talking about two completely different systems. So on a day-to-day basis, at my level, at the provincial level, I don't actually know the individual and whether they're immunized. For the most part, I do know it from some of the long-term care outbreaks, for example, because the public health team on the ground is able to understand, does the investigation on the ground. So that person's individual clinician and knows whether they've been immunized or not. But that data that we use to look at it at a provincial level is linked data that we get after the fact. So I can't tell you of the 5 deaths that happened today, whether each individual person was immunized or not. The public health team knows that on the ground. Their clinicians know that.
他说，具体的工作人员会知道今天的5例死亡，他们的这个疫苗有没有接种啊？具体的工作人员知道，我不知道，我现在没办法告诉你。那么刚才我给大家分享的这些数据呢，是12月17号到现在，27号到5月1号的这个时间。
Glenn, do you have a follow-up?
这个死亡的案例的分析。
You are saying that it's accurate. There are 13 deaths in people who have been vaccinated, and then as a follow-up, a lingering question I've had is on recoveries, because months ago you were saying that people would get 2 negative tests to determine that they're recovered, but I've heard of people who
这个记者很有心，他说你1个月之前也是说到这些事，
self-isolating. So first of all, just clarify, 13 deaths, is that the accurate number? And then,
no, that's not correct, actually. It was 30, 30 people who died between December 27th and May
1st. 例不是13例英文里边13和30还是有点区别。
And 4 had received 2 doses.
有4例死亡是2例都是受过2针的，但是我没有这个没有具体的数字，就是说他这个受到2针多少时间里边。
We used testing, but people needed to have 2 negative PCR tests to be declared recovered.
那么说病人如何证明自己是转阴性呢？要连续测2次咽拭拭子的这个核酸检测如果2次都是阴性的，那么就是表示病人已经康复。那么同时呢，他说病人康复呢已经没有带身上有带病毒，但不会传播了。他说你不会再传染其他给其他人了。他说德国的研究是证明了
detecting live virus,
就算他们身上有检测到活的病毒就是他6天以后或者8天以后这个时候是最容易传播给其他人的。那么10天以后呢，那么一般的全球来看下来呢不会再传染了就算他如果有症状出现了6天到8天是传染最厉害的时候这个是大家也清楚。
If you're infected, you're at home. After 10 days, you're no longer infectious.
那么同时呢，他说你感染10天以后，你就不会再传染给其他人了这个好像我去年做转播简报的时候，其实他也把这个知识告诉我们了。
The course of their illness, or people who have immune suppression, who may actually be infectious for longer. So on an individual basis, they may be asked to isolate for a longer period of time. So that's the infectious period from somebody who's infected with the virus. And so we consider somebody recovered from the acute illness once they're past their infectious period. In terms of people who've been exposed, we know the incubation period. So the time from when I've been exposed to the virus to when I can develop symptoms remains about 14 days.
那么同时呢，从受感染到发展出有症状呢是14天，也就是我们说的潜伏期是14天。所以为什么检疫的期间是14天？
Next question we go to Lisa Houston is 11:30.
他是做一个解释。
Hi there.
Sorry, Lisa. Are you there?
这个记者打电话进来，其实是
I believe you're on hold, Lisa, so we're going to go to Prabjot Kalam, Omni
其实
TV.
这个声音是 on hold 的声音。
Yes, thank you so much for taking my question. Yes, Dr. Henry, as we are convincing everyone to take a vaccine, and I know Fraser has set up the kiosk booth today at the Walmart, but we see not really good response comparatively what we are getting the response from the Sikh temple. Yesterday, in few hours, they registered more than 400 people for next clinic. So why we are not increasing those type of
因为这个记者说的是这个印度的锡克教的反应他说我们每个人都要打，我们都要说。
Even the temple authority saying they are willing to help even 3 clinics a week. So why we are not increasing those services if we want to see more vaccination into the community?
听不懂。
You're absolutely right. We need to do all of these things, not one or the other. And I know there's a concerted effort in the city of Surrey, particularly working with Fraser Health to engage with all those different settings for different populations in those communities. And right now, the immunization clinics that we have are set up to be able to very rapidly expand. So it's much more challenging to bring vaccine by itself to different areas. That's why we're right now focusing on people registering and then supporting them to get to one of the mass clinics. But we are also looking at many different ways where we can bring vaccine to people as we have more and more vaccine available. And one of the things that we're waiting for is the Pfizer vaccine still is a very fussy vaccine. It can only stay at room temperature for a very short period of time.
辉瑞疫苗的特别也讲究这个暴露的外面的温度时间又很短。所以呢，这个条件有限我看过一篇报道，也是说到了为什么发达国家施打疫苗普及率高，因为条件好。那么发展中国家这个冰箱或者是这种储存都有问题，所以就有点难度。
community places where people are more comfortable.
所以他说了，就是我们这么做呢，设立临时点是只是让大家接受注册，注册了之后呢，没办法在这个注册点给你们打，就是因为这个疫苗的储存温度都有讲究。有一个网友是我其实我对印度口音已经习惯很多，但是这位女士我还是有点听不大懂但是你要仔细听，你天天听，其实他们有一个特点，什么 we 他们说 V 和 V 他们不分的。
Where you can actually look not only at the COVID rates, the immunization rates, but also looking at it by age and age group, because one of the big factors that we know is that the structure of the population is different in different communities. So, for example, in White Rock, there's a much higher proportion of older people. So the immunization rates are higher in that community because older people have been able to receive their vaccines for a longer period of time.
但是呢，同时呢，具体问题具体分析。他说，白石地区的人口呢，老龄化特别严重都是老年人，所以看上去呢，这个白石的施打率就会很高。所以他也是说到了，因为随着疫苗的到货越来越多，那么现在呢，数据可以看会逐步开放更多的人来打，所以呢，数据会显示疫苗的接种率基本上每个社区都会慢慢接近因为白石他解释了为什么看上去白石接种率这么高，因为白石的老年人多这个可能这有些因素不是我们普通人我们普通人就说你们白石为什么那么打的那么多，我们这个其他的地区为什么打的这么少不是这个原因，他这个伯尼医生已经解释了。所以同时呢，他也是说到了，就是热点地区可以先打那么13个热点地区，同时呢，苏里地区又是重点13个热点地区里边，苏里占了好几个，所以苏里又可以打。苏里和白石是两个城市苏里是镇苏里是市，白石是镇。那么同时呢，他说只要这个社区呢居民重视疫苗的话呢，那么这个社区的接种率就会高。
But I think these are really great things, and going forward, we will be able to look by community and see how we're doing. And
同时呢，他说随着疫苗接种的人数越来越多，我们可以从社区可以去比较社区来社区比，现在比没有意义。
Just to express my appreciation to
那么他也是表达了很多人组织社团对这个注册的帮助表示感谢特别是树立本地的一些卫生机构
immunization varies, but there has been an enormous effort, and that effort is going to continue to grow.
因为树立的确社区比较复杂很多他们相免疫接种的免疫力呢，这个相差很大。
18 and above, you register, and you'll be invited to book very soon after you register.
所以他说热点地区呢，18岁以上的人只要注册了，就会马上就会得到预约的信息。
Because whether you're in Surrey or not, after the weekend.
那么同时呢，这个周末以后，不管你是不是在树立那么他也是说到了很多的热点地区，主要是在树立，那么马上就会给你预约。那么请大家马上来预约那么他也是说到了下周这个周末过去只要你预约了，基本上就会给你通知去只要你注册了这个周末过去，只要你注册了，基本上就会马上通知你去预约了。
In BC, the week that started
那
Monday,
么同时呢，我也是听说了周一到周五啊，会展中心排队的人很多很多，所以大家不要以为周末牺牲了休息时间。那么其实时间上是核算的周末我是周日到这个会展中心去打的，很少我预约的是4点3刻，因为我要踩点，我3点钟就去了。我跟他们说，我说我太早了，他说你打没关系 ，doesn't matter。一看没有人，我说的没有人是指没有人排队，连等都不要等。不等于是很多空的位置，不是说很多空位置。
Regarding up here, a little bit of a different situation. Obviously, Alberta, 10 kilometers away. And
这个男先生记者可能是住在阿神隔壁10公里的地方，所以他也是说到他们要跟阿神比了。
Numbers revealing over 1,000 cases, and then South Peace almost 1,000 as well. I was wondering, either from the minister or Dr. Henry, if there's any special consideration being, well, I guess considered for the north as far as travel or stopping transmission or
因为那边还有很高的感染数字，那么你们这个来回之间2个省之间的禁令如何加强？他说我也跟我们阿省的同事在讨论，因为这个阿省和 BC 省的相互之间来回走动还很多。这个对我们来讲也是真的是很困。很多呢不是旅游，而主要是为了工作，有些呢因为是采矿有些呢是等等有些是工业上的问题，所以我们也是希望能够降低这个风险。这个是很困难，特别是去年圣诞节的之前的那段时间，很多地方爆发大家都听到了 BC 内陆特别是和阿省相邻的这些矿发生了很多爆发。所以我们现在也是对这些社区对这些工作场所加强了疫苗的施打，同时加强了那些增多的这个施打疫苗的地方。
Wanting to be immunized, so I would say everybody needs to reach out and talk to their neighbors, talk to their friends. You can see the issues that we're dealing with, and we all need to be immunized now. There's vaccine available for everybody. Northern Health is making it available in communities through a variety of different ways. And right now is really important in those communities too.
所以重点扶持所以很重要，就是你去注册，你去打。
Just with respect to the piece, I want to express my appreciation to Mayor Ackerman, Mayor Bumstead, and the 2 large communities and community leaders across the region. You look at along the Alberta border a number of weeks ago, we saw relatively low immunization rates, and those are going up. We made a major effort a few weeks ago in Dawson Creek related to transmission in that community, but also as you go further down the border, further south along the border in the Golden Local Health Area,
in the Wiener Local Health Area, the Columbia Valley, and obviously in Revelstoke. And we see the effect of that over a period of weeks. So I want to express my appreciation to everyone, 所以也表示感谢之意。那边都是加强了这个疫苗的施打，使得他们那边的社区居民基本上都免疫了。
We've already seen a positive response in Dawson Creek, and we hope that continues. It's
Dawson Creek,
important for people in those communities to get immunized, and in hotspot communities across BC to do so. And we see when it happens. We've seen it in the Columbia Valley. We've seen it in Revelstoke. We're seeing it in Golden. We're seeing it in Dawson Creek. We'll see it in Fort St. John. Get registered and get immunized.
所以他提的这些地区，圣江Dawson Creek 这些地方，只要你注册了，就马上就给你打了就是重点地区。
Just over the past weekend, it being Mother's Day, I can think of many.
他也是说到了过去的一个周末母亲节，所以很多人。
But I have a single father who, going into Mother's Day, does the exchange and then proceeds to watch the mother of the children literally drive to Alberta, go around
也是到阿
the
省去
roundabout
玩
and
啊，
head off
母亲
to,
带着孩子嘛，去
well,
还
in
是
the Spirit River, Rycroft, up to Hines Creek area, which is obviously nowhere near the area. And then the other
还有
example
划
in the
船啊
North Piece, I can think of
远
the
足啊
Presbyterian Church gathering where the
还有
RCMP
这个宗教
put out a release and clearly,
宗教
to
活
use an
动的
old school
聚会
term, turned dime on Bell Media, who tipped them off. I was just wondering when it relates to, again, attempting to stop transmission, lowering risk, and holding the line, how does again, either the minister or public health and Dr. Henry expected that to, these numbers to go down when either enforcement seems to be letting people know who does tip them off, or in some cases, again, it seems to be a free-for-all as far as travel, regardless of what people think as far as what is safe and what isn't. How do, I guess, what do you say to people that are still continuing to break these things? And then how does it work for the general public when, as again, colleagues like Mike Bernier are doing everything they can, and that, transmission is still
这个记者其实不在提问，是在抱怨啊，因为他听上去他是阿省边境的啊。那么伯恩医生也是说到，这个是人性啊，人性的行为，人类的行为。我们所做的也很少，我们只能是加强执法，加强宣传。
Our family, our friends, to ensure that they're doing their part too.
同时呢，希望每个人做好自己的分内的事。
People travel, and when we're close to people, and it can happen very quickly, and it can spread very quickly.
所以大家要一定要清楚只要人和人之间只要旅行过啦，或者是亲密接触啊，病毒很容易传播。我们也知道这个是很困难啊，大家也很沮丧啊，不让我这样走，不让我那样去。
Overall, we know that people are doing the right thing.
但是呢，总体来讲呢，大家还是做得很好啊。我们也是鼓励大家做正确的事啊。我们大家都知道什么是正确的啊，就是等在当地啊，在公众场所戴口罩啊，这个人员聚集少一点。
Our family and our community.
这样是保护我们的家庭，也保护我们的社区啊，这个是最重要的。
We have time for one more question. For everyone listening, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix will release a statement this afternoon with the latest information on cases, hospitalizations, and outbreaks, which you can find at news.gov.bc.ca. Last question goes to Tanya Fletcher, CBC.
Yeah, Dr. Henry, 28 cases of the AstraZeneca-related blood clots have now been reported in Canada.
整个加拿大有28例过敏反应是阿斯利康的疫苗。
But is that number higher than you expected here? And for those who are now considering a second dose of AstraZeneca, can you confirm that most?
但是呢，你又说这个案例比较少，同时呢，又是安全的啊，同时呢，又考虑用阿斯利康作为第二针疫苗啊，你解释一下。
And in one way, we put out that word across Canada. So it is important that people, if they have the symptoms, that they get assessed and treated. And we've put the word out to clinicians as well. So in some ways, that's a good thing. It's not above what could be expected, what we've seen in other places. And it is an important safety signal. But we also have to put it in the context of what we're seeing in terms of cases and risk of COVID in our communities too, which we know are affecting all ages of people, which we know are more likely to cause hospitalizations, severe and blood clots, different types of blood clots, but certainly, especially young people are having symptoms with COVID-19. So the risk-benefit profile changes as cases start to come down, and as more people are protected with immunization, and that's something we've seen in the UK.
4月份的时候对阿斯利康的暂停决定是一样的。
It appears the risk is much less with dose 2.
那么同时呢，他说第二针的风险小得多，所以呢，我们没有排除把阿斯利康作为第二针疫苗。因为第一针呢，主要是让身体里边的免疫激活起来，这个是让身体里边的抗体建立起来。那么所以呢，第二针呢只是加强booster， 所以呢，第二针他说打这个阿斯利康的风险就会小的很多。所以呢，这样的话呢，就引起血管里边的血栓就会很少。这个，所以只要是第一针的时候进去疫苗打进去之后，让身体里边的激起身体里边的免疫系统建立抗体这个是最重要的。那么第二针呢，汇报的过敏反应会很少。我们可以看到英国的数据，同时我们也在密切观察其他的国家用了阿斯利康，德国用得很好所以大家还是要风险和利益相互平衡再看再评估。那么同时呢，加拿大也有其他的一些可以选择的同时可以用这个疫苗，就辉瑞疫苗或者是莫德纳疫苗。所以
And we want to make sure that we're because we have those choices, that we're not receiving more of the AstraZeneca vaccine than people want to take, because we know globally there's a need for immunization for protection in many other countries as well. 那么他说我们其实也没有收到更多的阿斯利康，因为就算是阿斯利康这个疫苗在全球也是供应紧张，所以他的意思就是我们现在更多的是辉瑞和莫德纳没有阿斯利康了。
This is becoming more common in the U.S., where people are being offered things like free sports tickets with your vaccine. So if hesitancy is a concern, and you just talked about reluctance in some parts of the north, so what is the province going to do about that to get us to herd immunity?
Yeah, right now, a lot of what we are hearing from people is still that they have questions and they're not sure that it's for them. And really what we are hearing as we move more and more and it's more and more available to people, that acceptance, people are getting their questions answered, and that acceptance is going up. And we are working right now at the community level to help people understand the vaccine, what's available to them, make it accessible so there's no barriers for them being able to get the vaccine. And that is where we're seeing good uptake across the board. So we do need to work with community groups, with leaders in the community for those communities where vaccine is not commonly accepted.
同时呢，我们的这个社团的一些领袖也是宗教的领袖都在社区里边继续做工作帮助我们推广疫苗的概念那么大家可以看到疫苗带来给我们带来了那么多的好处保护我们的所亲爱的人，保护我们的家庭所以大家能够认识到这个疫苗的这个正确的利益正面的作用同时呢也看到了经济的恢复所以同时呢从我本人来看到呢就是很多年轻人也是急着要打疫苗因为大家急着希望回到正常的生活当中去我们已经看到了已经看到了很多有些社区我们省里边得到了疫苗所带来的巨大的好处我们刚才分享的这些PowerPoint 数据都能够说明了疫苗带来的好处我们不能低估这个疫苗带给我们这次对待全球流行病的抵抗作用这个现在呢卫生厅厅长又说法语了
272,537 doses of AstraZeneca administered in BC
他说到就已经27万针阿斯利康已经打了也就27万针说实话 都是99%的人打了第一针，是打了阿斯利康，是27万多都是60岁以上的，基本上是60岁以上的人打。那么他又说了法语了。好了，那么今天的数据呢，因为不是3点钟开始的，所以他们这个数据我认为是1点钟左右的截止时期，所以没有24小时。昨天呢，我翻一翻昨天的新增数字应该是600多还是500多，所以呢，总体来讲还是真的是下来了。昨天是，等一下我翻一翻的邮件。昨天是600例诊，那么昨天的总数呢就是137223，住院呢是423人住院，141人重症监护。昨天呢有1例死亡那么今天的数字呢是587例新增，总数呢到了137810例诊。同时呢，飞沙卫生局一骑绝尘365例新增，沿岸卫生局新增126例，岛上卫生局新增21例，北部卫生局新增15例，内陆卫生局新增60例。那么住院呢是413人住院，重症监护呢是141个人，和昨天是一样。但是呢，很遗憾呢，新增死亡呢是5例，昨天是1例。那么伯尼医生呢也说了70岁以上、80岁以上。那么到目前为止，已经超过50%的可以施打的疫苗的人口已经施打了第一针。具体的数字呢是2335513例这个就是今天给大家汇报的这些数字。同时呢，我再给大家稍微小结一下今天的会议的开始呢，简报的开始呢，伯尼医生给大家分享了5张 PowerPoint 的这个数据，主要是分析了疫苗给大家所带来的作用，特别是疫苗对老年人、对长期护理院以及对医护人员以及长期护理院的职员所带来的巨大的好处。他们打了之后，这个曲线极限下降。同时呢，又举了一个北部的一个城市叫Prince Rupert。Prince Rupert 的这个城市呢4月13号左右呢，给他们全市紧急施打疫苗之后，这个疫情极限下降。所以呢，一定就是带给大家的信息，你现在轮到注册了，请赶紧来注册如注册完了之后，热点地区的人马上就会给你预约，来你去预约。所以这个是给大家带来的这个信息，就是疫苗是带来的最大的好处。所以希望大家能够注册，愿意去打就去行动起来。那么这个至于重启呢，可能要到5月长周末以后，卫生官员根据这个几个礼拜疫情才做出具体的分析。所以伯尼医生请大家暂时不要再考虑夏天或者近期的旅行计划。那么各位观众，今天的 BC 省新闻简报呢，我们就给大家转播到这儿，感谢您的收看，祝大家